Hey y'all, hope everyone is doing well today and welcome back. We're going to finish what we started talking about Katie Joy Paulson and this lawsuit with 7M Films, Robert Shin, Miranda Derrick, and James Derrick. And as we know, Katie Joy Paulson was sued by 7M in April of 2022. Where this case is right now is both parties filed a motion for summary judgment, and that hearing was held January 5th of 2025. Right now, we're waiting on a ruling, and hopefully we will hear something back by the beginning of April. A ruling on summary judgment could allow this case to come to an end and be disposed of if there is no genuine dispute of material fact after the judge reviews this and makes a decision. That is what the decision will be based upon. Is there any genuine dispute of material fact? Meaning, in this case, the disputed fact is this defamation? Did Katie Joy defame 7M Films? Is Katie Joy going to be found guilty of defamation? Is 7M going to prove that she, in fact, did defame? And as a reminder, in a situation such as this, where public figures are involved, it has to be proven that Katie Joy Paulson acted with malice during her statements. Did Katie Joy Paulson actually know that what she was stating was false? Because both parties filed, there are two moving parties in this case, obviously, and therefore both parties were able to respond to the other in response to their memorandums for summary judgment. And they obviously did do that, and we'll go over that as well. It may or may not be in this video. We'll see how long this takes us, but it is very interesting, y'all, extremely interesting to see what Katie Joy and 7M's response was to the other's memorandum regarding summary judgment. As we know, this case was set to go to trial, and in a situation such as this, either party can file a motion for summary judgment, which would allow the courts to review the evidence prior and possibly dispose of this case before having to go to trial, saving time and money, etc., for the courts and the parties. The court will grant a summary judgment if the movement, and in this case, remember, both parties filed, so both parties are a movement in this, if they're able to show that there is no genuine dispute as to any material fact. The fact in dispute here is, did Katie Joy defame 7M? Is this defamation? Did Katie Joy defame 7M, Robert Shin, Miranda Derrick, and or James Derrick? We saw 7M and Katie Joy list out all the undisputed facts. The undisputed fact is Katie Joy did say this. Katie Joy did say that. There are statements that Katie Joy said. That is a fact. She said these things. However, was it defamation? Were these things said with malice? Did Katie Joy know that what she was saying wasn't truthful and it wasn't factual? That's the issue here. So both parties have provided their evidence to support their argument within their memorandums. However, if there is a genuine issue of material fact, the judge cannot make a decision without sending it to trial. Therefore, then this case could go to trial. So the question is Katie Joy going to be able to defend herself strongly enough in this? And is 7M providing enough evidence to prove that Katie Joy Paulson did defame? And don't hate me for saying this, y'all, please, because believe me, I don't like saying it either. But we have to remember how difficult it is in a defamation case to actually prove defamation. So we shall see what this judge decides with both parties presenting evidence and summary judgment. And if there is no genuine dispute of material fact, then they will make a ruling. It could be in Katie's favor. It could be in 7M's favor. If there is still a genuine dispute of material fact, then this case will go to trial. It could be also that she rules in part that there are some issues that there is no dispute. And there might be some that there still is a dispute, and the judge will need to send it to trial. Okay, and after that, let's move on to where we left off with Katie Joy Paulson's memorandum, and we're going to breeze through it pretty quickly, but there are some things I really want to point out before we get to Katie Joy's declaration and her attorney Jennifer Moore's declaration. So at page 48, Katie Joy Paulson finally, or her attorney, whoever wrote this, finally finished listing out the statements that 7M stated in the original complaint that Katie Joy Paulson made as defamatory. And as we saw, she over-explained a lot of things when in all reality, if she had a source that was accurate, that's all she had to state was that she heard it from her source, say she fact-checked it, which we all know she didn't, but instead it was a lot of nonsense of saying how 7M was wrong, how they misinterpreted it, and how 7M is not providing any links. And so now we have another 20 pages to go for Katie Joy Paulson to explain some other things away. And what gets me, though, as I said in the first one, is there is a 35-page limit for a summary judgment within Minnesota. And she submitted a 69-page memorandum, and then her declaration, and then her attorney's declaration with, gosh, y'all, the amount of attachments is just insane. So I don't know. If she did not get approval from the court, which I'm not saying she did or did not, this could be bad in Katie Joy's favor. Just a thought. So the next thing Katie Joy states is that there was other media coverage, and we'll get into this in just a bit in more detail, but she lists the other outlets, publishers, etc. that talked about 7M. Then she gets into the lawsuit that is happening in LA that Robert Shin initiated against some former members along with 2 other bloggers. Well, originally it was 3 bloggers, one settled out. And then she talks about how there was an entire Netflix docuseries created. So therefore, she's not the only one that has spoken about 7M, and there was a lot of other public interest. Next, she talks about actual malice. And if you Google Minnesota and actual malice in a defamation lawsuit, it says in Minnesota, actual malice is a standard that applies to defamation cases involving public figures, public officials, and private people involved in public controversies. To prove actual malice, the plaintiff must show that the defendant knew the statement was false or acted with reckless disregard for the truth. They state that Katie Joy Paulson was not familiar with the Wilkings prior to their video and that her Instagram was not monetized at the time. But I don't know if that really looks good for her because it's monetized now, and it was monetized, after she started talking about 7M. Is that why? Did it really bring her money? Did 7M get her Instagram monetized? Anyway, then she states there is no evidence that Paulson was aware that any of the Instagram content she published in her complaint was false. Once again, y'all, she did not. Oh my gosh, the complaint was not on her end. She is a defendant. 7M sued her. Okay, anyways, moving on. She then goes on to talk about discovery violation and states that plaintiffs were ordered to produce tax returns and other financial documents in the court's order dated January 29th of 2024. And they state that the plaintiffs failed to produce said tax returns and that they never produced them and that there was correspondence between the 2 parties, and the result was they never produced these documents. We will see what Amber Stavig has to say about that whenever we look at her response to this memorandum. On to their argument and their standard of review. They talk about summary judgment. And of course, that summary judgment is appropriate when there is no genuine issue of material fact and a party is entitled to judgment as a matter of law. Then they go on to talk more about summary judgment, blah, blah. I mean, honestly, y'all, this could have been wrapped up so much more quickly. We're on page 53 of 69, and I'm bored out of my mind. And again, I can only imagine what this judge is thinking. The second part of their argument is that plaintiff's defamation claims must be dismissed because A, summary judgment is appropriate because defendants' statements were privileged. They go on to say to establish a defamatory claim, a plaintiff must prove 3 elements. The defamatory statement is communicated to someone other than the plaintiff. 2, the statement is false. And 3, the statement tends to harm the plaintiff's reputation and to lower the plaintiff in the estimation of the community. She references the landmark case, New York Times versus Sullivan. Feel free to pause and read about this case and how it applies here. Y'all, I'm just seriously, it goes on and on. Here we are, page 56, and we can kind of sum up the New York Times case finally. States, no matter how gross the untruth, the New York Times rule deprives a defamed public figure of any hope for legal redress without proof that the lie was a knowing one or uttered in reckless disregard of the truth. Now here we're back to qualified privilege again, which is clearly part of her defense. And she states, in such cases, a plaintiff must prove that the statements were made with malice, and the absence of such malice precludes recovery. Katie Joy Paulson's attorney states, y'all, and I'm so sick of all these errors, but it says there is some confusion in the law between common law malice, where a plaintiff need only show the statements were made from ill will, and improper motive or causelessly for the purpose of injuring the plaintiff. Then they go on to talk more about common law malice, but don't say what the confusion is between common law malice and what's the confusion between. I know it's supposed to be actual malice, but they never even circle back around to actual malice. She finally does get to the point of actual malice, even though she didn't finish that thought. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is what they meant. I don't know. But in such cases, a plaintiff must prove actual malice. And then they give the definition of actual malice as a knowing or reckless disregard for the truth or falsity of a statement that has nothing to do with motive or ill will in the publishing of otherwise defamatory statement. So I guess they could have wrapped this up a little more quickly than this, while defining common law malice and actual malice. Again, they've already discussed this in this memorandum at one point. So I don't know, y'all, just let's move on. If you cannot tell how bored I am with this, I don't know what to tell you. This is god awful, y'all. That's just my opinion, because actual malice would involve public figures. Of course, she's going to talk about how the Derricks are public figures. There is no dispute. There is no argument with that. And then she talks about how Robert Shin is also a public figure. Again, I don't think that was ever disputed by 7M. They then go into even more ridiculous explanation regarding public figures and state, all of the plaintiffs were public figures and that the reporting was of legitimate public concern, and on about public figures and Robert Shin and Miranda and James. Again, this is not disputed by 7M. They have not argued that Robert Shin was not a public figure. We know Miranda and James are. Anyways, moving on. Can we please get through this, y'all? We finally get to the third part of the argument. Under Minnesota law, it is irrelevant whether Paulson is a journalist. They state, although defendants have pressed for recognition of Paulson as a journalist in connection with its argument under Minnesota's Free Flow of Information Act, the application of a privilege does not require a finding that Paulson is a journalist. Instead, courts determine whether speech is of public or private concern. They then try to argue that, obviously Katie Joy Paulson was doing this out of public concern, and her coverage was clearly geared towards securing the exit of the Derricks and other dancers from what the Wilkings and others viewed as a cult. But no worries here, y'all. Just Katie Joy Paulson, just being the hero of this public concern. And now she's back to bragging about how big her Instagram is and how many followers she has and how large of a reach it has. Where before it was, oh no, my Instagram was small, I'm not monetized on it. But in relation to this, it's important that she has a large reach, because then she says such a public reach weighs in favor of concluding that Paulson's speech involved a matter of public concern. She then talks about how the court must examine the broader context of defendant's speech, because the Wilkings video was so viral and everyone else is talking about it. But if we remember, back then, Katie Joy Paulson was the only one discussing this in the very beginning. And how many of these publications were an offshoot of that? That certainly is a question to be asked. They then actually state, in short, yeah, right, that was very short, wasn't it? This is really all they had to state in the first place. Whether Paulson was a traditional journalist or not, she was reporting on a matter of public concern and interest, and plaintiffs must be held to the same. Y'all, she doesn't know that she's not the plaintiff, that she is the defendant. And plaintiffs must be held to the same standard as would apply to traditional journalists in determining whether her public reporting and statements were subject to a qualified privilege. Do I have that wrong? Should it say plaintiffs? Y'all, I'm so cross-eyed, but anyways, moving on. Please let this be over. But regardless, qualified privilege, she did not act with actual malice. And now we're going to go on to part 4 of their argument, where she states, and yes, y'all, this is part of her argument. This is here. I'm reading this. It states, 4, defendants have failed to present evidence of absolute malice required to support their defamation claim. Defendants have failed. You're the defendant, Katie Joy Paulson. You're the defendant. So you have failed to present evidence. I just can't. We've skipped over so much too, y'all. How many errors were in the parts that we skipped over? But they continue this argument and they say that thus plaintiffs must, they finally got it right, show evidence of actual malice. That is, that Paulson had actual knowledge that her statements were false or they were made with reckless disregard for the truth. Y'all, I truly can't really even entertain this much longer, but we're getting closer to the end, I guess. So then she gives a definition of reckless disregard. I mean, I really can't even imagine what the judge is thinking. Here we are, page 61, and they state defendant's statements were either true opinion about individuals and organizations not part of this lawsuit or non-reputational, and that defendants stand by the reporting. However, if the court finds that all or some of defendant's statements are not protected by qualified privilege, defendants, y'all, I swear I'm so cross-eyed at this point. Defendants address in broad strokes, y'all, the substantive elements of defamation. Blah, blah. And then they say, however, there are a few categories that may warrant more particular attention. Y'all, they're going to add more to this. They are going to add more categories. So we're just going to skip it. But feel free to pause and read if you wish. So moving on. I mean, they're ultimately just bringing up points that they've already brought up in this memorandum in the beginning or throughout. It's just kind of wild. And now we're, down to where they bring up the claim of tortious interference, and they state that plaintiff's actual recitation of their tortious interference claim, though, is markedly different than that contemplated under Minnesota law. Plaintiff's claim asserts not that defendants actually contacted third parties, but that they here essentially called for a boycott. According to the amended summons and complaint, plaintiffs allege, and then they give a list of all the times or things that they consider Katie Joy Paulson reaching out to these third parties that 7M and the dancers may have been in collaboration with. They then go on to state that, thus, what plaintiffs are actually attempting here is to impose liability for a call for a consumer boycott. Y'all, this is laughable. This should scare anyone who has ever gone on Twitter to tell others not to go to Chick-fil-A or Hobby Lobby. Why should this scare anyone? Why should this scare anybody for going on Twitter and saying things like,
you can go to Michael's and get craft supplies. Freaking buy them on Amazon. Go anywhere but Hobby Lobby.
Exactly.
They also sell stolen artifacts from Egypt.
And stolen art.
Support them if you support sex trafficking and R of women and not women's reproductive rights,
Mm-hmm.
It's just funny to me that they had to state this in this memorandum about people going on to other platforms and stating their thoughts or feelings about a certain company and to not go there. Clearly, who wrote this? Who wrote this, y'all? Continuing on. Regarding 7M, stating that Katie Joy Paulson is, in fact, encouraging her followers to contact these sponsors. Katie Joy Paulson states that anyone contacted by defendants' followers were completely free to engage or not engage with plaintiffs. They are now addressing the claims of intentional infliction of emotional distress, negligence per se, deceptive trade practices, and why these claims must be dismissed. Now, moving on, once again, here we are. We're circling back to something that was already addressed in this memorandum, but here they are addressing it again and the reasons why these claims should all be dismissed. And they're including now again that plaintiff's failure to provide discovery ordered by the court should result in dismissal of all claims. So once again, they are rehashing what happened on January 29th of 2024, what the order stated, and what the plaintiffs have failed to do. Again, y'all, this was supposed to be 35 pages max, and here we are on page 66, just regurgitating everything that has already been said before, and stating once again how this lack of discovery has affected their case. She continues on to say that the court has a right to issue sanctions in this matter because they did not provide discovery, and that due to that, this should forfeit the right to a trial. And believe it or not, they are still talking about how 7M has not provided discovery. And yes, and that's something I said that Amber Stavig does address this in her response. So we will go over that then. And look here, y'all, we're at page 68 and 69, the conclusion. We are done with that. And when we look at Katie Joy's response to 7M's memorandum, you're going to see a big difference in how it's written. That is why I truly question how much of a part Katie Joy Paulson had in writing this memorandum, this 69-page memorandum. But what we're getting into next is Katie Joy Paulson's declaration. So here is the declaration of Catherine Mansky Paulson, y'all. And let's just get right on into it. Katie Joy states, that she is a defendant in this matter, and she is a celebrity news journalist, publishing as Without a Crystal Ball. She says she has a YouTube channel with approximately 394,000 subscribers and an Instagram account with approximately 146,000 followers. She says that she is regularly cited and reported on in national publications such as People Magazine, In Touch Weekly, The Today Show, and Us Weekly, among other whatever. Okay, moving on. She says that she has reported firsthand accounts of the personal experiences of the dancers and influencers who formerly worked for plaintiffs based on information she received directly and through other media outlets and court records. She says her income is primarily driven by her YouTube channel, and now her Instagram feed is monetized, but it wasn't prior. Honestly, I don't know how that helps her, y'all, but whatever. She says she's not an influencer, y'all. She's a journalist that investigates and reports on entertainment news stories. She says her primary focus is on polygamist cultures and extremist religious groups. You mean like the reality TV shows, Sister Wives and the Duggars, the Duggar family, whatever, 19 Kids Counting, whatever it was. Yeah, that's what you report on, not real world shit. Okay. Anyways, she says, in reporting on these matters, I develop relationships with verified sources, conduct web searches, and review public records, such as property records, yeah, we know this, motor vehicle, and vital statistics records, and court records. And most of her reporting is based upon sources that she names or documents that she excerpts directly into the post. She says her commentary is based upon her cumulative reporting and her knowledge related to the topics upon which she reports. Then she goes on to say that her reporting of plaintiffs is unflattering but truthful, and that she does not have actual malice against any of the plaintiffs and no personal grudges against 7M Films, Robert Shin, Miranda Derrick, or James Derrick. And I disagree completely with that. We've seen her. We've seen it. We've seen how much she dislikes Miranda and James Derrick. It's very clear. And then how much she absolutely despises and hates Robert Shin. It's clear. She calls him every name in the book. How is that not a grudge? Okay. She then says again that she's not the only reporter interested in defendants, and she talks about all the other outlets or whatnot that have spoken on 7M Films, and we'll go over that in more detail in just a bit. And of course, she mentions the Netflix docuseries Dancing for the Devil. She then goes on to say that, to the best of her knowledge, defendants are not being sued by, the Rolling Stones, Daily Mail, the Daily Beast, the Sun, of course, Netflix. They're not suing Netflix, and they are going after her because she is small enough to punish through costly litigation. She says that as a journalist, she's accorded significant protection under the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. Yet she also acknowledges that she might not be if she makes statements with actual malice. She really, really thinks she is a journalist. It's insane to me, but whatever. She said she first started to report on this situation with Miranda when a follower tipped her off to the video that the Wilkings made, and she did not know the Wilkings prior to her reporting. After her first report, she was able to obtain information from friends and family of 7M dancers, former members of Shekinah Church, and from former 7M clients. At times, sources have requested that I maintain confidentiality. I have released those names to plaintiffs under a highly confidential designation. She says that during her investigation, she became aware of several lawsuits brought on against Robert Shin and Shekinah Church. And then she goes on to say that at no time did she ever knowingly publish a document which was covered by a protective order in a case where she was a party. She then goes on to list all of her sources here, I guess minus the ones that she gave to them, confidentially. She then says, in the course of my reporting, I often became aware of addresses for one or more of the plaintiffs through public records searches. Despite the fact that I was aware of these addresses, I never knowingly published the street address of any plaintiff. Now, as we know, she did dox James and Miranda's new address, And I don't care what she says. I believe it was on purpose. That's my opinion. And here's a reminder of how she did it.
Derek is back again, filming content from her townhouse. Even though Miranda has allegedly told friends that she lives on her own and doesn't have anything to do with Shekinah Church and certainly doesn't live in property connected to them, this is actually not true. The home she's filming at is actually a rental that was leased through Shin Real Estate Group through the realtor Matthew Shin.
Where that red arrow is pointing is directly to where she had James and Miranda's address. I, of course, have blocked it out. I've cropped it out. And she also included the MLS number whenever she did this. She tried to say, oh, it was an accident. She left it up long enough to cause damage, and then she went and she made a correction. But how many other people, along with me, saw their actual address? She did dox them, absolutely, with an arrow pointing right to it. She then says that she has been in contact with some of the other publications, but to her knowledge, they've come across the same information within their own research. She says that she has been credited as an archival consultant for Dancing for the Devil in the capacity that she granted the production company the right to use her social media content in their production. She now has to say that, yeah, sometimes she gets things wrong, just like she did whenever she was adamant that James and Miranda were not married, and she gives the reasons why she thought they weren't. If you don't know, then don't say it. That's just kind of where I'm at with this. But anyways, she states, yeah, that she was wrong, okay, that she could find no record of a marriage, even though in California, many people choose to make these records public, and some don't. They weren't there. You didn't find it. Why not take their word for it? Why? Because she has a grudge against them. That's why, in my opinion. She then gives the excuse that she was told that other members had been forced to be married or pretend that they were married or whatever her excuse is. And then we go on and she states that she has contacted no organization who she knew contracted with 7M Films. She also says, I may have encouraged my followers to contact companies, or language that could be interpreted as doing this, but that is protected activity under the First Amendment. So she says she's never contacted any of these companies. She says, Dear Toyota, you are supporting a cult. And the post states, brands need to know who they are involved with, and it's why it's super important for people to speak out. Brands do not want any connection to abuse or the appearance of mind control or human trafficking. I know it's scary to stand up, but the right thing to do is to speak up with what you know and do it without fear. The truth will never hurt you. And then she tags Toyota. Is tagging Toyota not contacting them? I don't know. I don't know what the courts would think on that. But here's something else that Katie Joyce said during a live stream.
I'm not stalking her, I'm not harassing her, and I'm certainly not following her. And I'm not contacting her brands. I haven't spoken to a single brand. I contacted one just to verify if they had a relationship.
So she did contact a company. She admitted it right there. She has contacted them. So here's a reminder of what Katie Joy Paulson said about contacting their sponsors.
You have to start looking at their income streams. And so when you are contacting sponsors, don't think that you're hurting the dancers. You're not hurting the dancers, in my opinion. They are being hurt by someone completely separate to any of this. They're not being hurt by me. They're not being hurt by you. They're in a alleged high controlled environment where they don't have freedom or free will.
She also states in her declaration that she has not agreed to stop publishing stories about the plaintiffs and that she has continued to publish well-sourced stories and fair opinion pieces about plaintiffs. So is this considered a fair opinion piece about the plaintiffs?
He's a serial rapist, okay? He's a serial rapist.
Robert is a dangerous man. I mean, Robert, I haven't even brought up your immigration fraud. What about all the green cards and the green card marriages? And then using those marriages, forcing people into these marriages, and then using that over their heads to intimidate them so they don't turn you into the police. What about your daughter's green card marriage? What about the forced marriages
I don't know. I don't know if that's considered fair or not. But then, what about this, where she states, ladies, and she's referring to James and Miranda. Ladies, if you're married to a man that looks away while a pastor assaults you, he's not worth being your husband. I mean, I don't know. Is that a fair opinion piece? She also says, real men don't act like Robert or James. I mean, I don't know. That just sounds like a grudge to me, but that's just my own personal opinion. She also had this to say, what kind of man stays at a church where women are being sexually abused and his wife being groomed by a pastor? A weak little boy. She's talking about James here, okay? No man that gives a shit about his wife would ever be okay with their wife being assaulted or groomed. Do better. I think it's important to add here, and again, it doesn't matter what my feelings are about Robert Shen, whether good or bad. He has not been charged for any of these things that Katie Joy Paulson is accusing him of. And according to her deposition stated by Amber Stavig, she was unable to prove any of these allegations as well. And of course, Katie Joy is always the victim, so she states, this lawsuit has caused me significant distress. Some of my social media channels have been hacked. I have been doxxed and swatted. She wasn't doxxed, y'all. That's a fact. She was not doxxed. No information was put out. Plus, does anybody else remember her saying this? And this is back in 2020. Hey everyone, you can't dox me. I've literally been doxed a million times. It won't hurt me. It only hurts you. Also, again, I'm not doxing a man who committed a RAPE. I'm literally telling him he doesn't get to hide anymore and warning potential victims. Now, this was nearly 5 years ago. Of course, she's not talking about Robert Shin, but, she sure does love to throw that around as an accusation, doesn't she? But again, she states she cannot be doxxed because she's already been doxxed a million times. She doxed Miranda and James. That is a fact. It's also a fact that she was not doxed any time around when she was saying this back in June of 2024. So she ends with, as a minor public figure, so she's trying to lower her status here, even though she is a, renowned, can't even say with a straight face, y'all. She's an investigative journalist, right? But as a minor public figure, I am familiar with the need to have thick skin, but I do not find that anything I have said warrants harassment that threatens my family's safety. And then she signs this under penalty of perjury. So let's take a look at Katie Joy Paulson's attorney, Jennifer Moore, and her fourth declaration. She includes a lot of exhibits with this. We'll kind of breeze through some of them, but there are a couple that we're going to look at a little more closely. So let's go ahead and get started. So Katie Joy Paulson's attorney, of course, she states that she's her attorney, and she also states that, as she has indicated to the court before, obtaining information related to this lawsuit has been exceedingly difficult. For example, in connection with our motion to compel discovery, I advised the court that I was having difficulty locating the posts ostensibly linked in the amended complaint. I asked plaintiffs to provide copies of any archived post, but their counsel refused. The problem might have been avoided if plaintiffs had provided defendants with a copy of the amended summons and complaint that contained hyperlinks. However, plaintiffs were not provided with a hyperlinked copy. Moreover, the court's website did not provide a copy of the complaint that could be used to access the links. In order to locate linked material, it was necessary for me to download a copy of the amended summons and complaint from the court's website. That document contained signature errors, so I had to print it to PDF format in order to, quote-unquote, flatten it. Once flattened, it was necessary for me to enter links as they appeared in the flattened document. She goes on to complain that because of the formatting errors that she had to remove all kinds of characters and add stuff and do this and that. But eventually she was able to locate most of the posts plaintiffs cited in the complaint. I'm sorry, y'all. I don't know why I find this funny, but I do. All right, she carries on. I could not locate all the posts even after I performed searches for keywords. You mean like the ones that your client deleted and probably didn't tell you about? She then states, this process took more than 20 hours of work that would not have been necessary had plaintiffs simply provided defendants with an accurate hyperlinked document. This is on top of the work I performed in connection with the motions to compel discovery. Then she states, Attached as Exhibit 1 is a spreadsheet I created that shows how the link that was provided in the complaint was not always the link where I found the post. This spreadsheet also serves as a reference guide to defendant's memorandum supporting summary judgment. Each claim directs to a specific finding of fact and contains a link to the post at issue. And we're going to take a look at the spreadsheet in just a bit, particularly the post that she claims there was no link to or that she could not find. But I was able to find them, so I don't know what to tell you. She then states the other exhibits, which, are the depositions of the parties and they're confidential. Exhibit 5 is a copy of the complaint that Katie Joy Paulson referenced a lot, the Lydia Chung lawsuit. And there's also a copy of an order dated in March of 2013 that Robert Shin was ordered to back pay to an employee. So they included that order as an attachment as well. She included the entire lawsuit from Los Angeles that Robert Shin is currently suing 5 other people, and then there was cross complaint added, so they included that lawsuit as an exhibit. They also included a copy of an order in a neighboring county, Hennepin County, that was a defamation lawsuit, and it also involved somebody calling someone else a cult and cult leader. And that is definitely something I want to talk more about. I don't want to do it here, so I'll probably do a separate video regarding that lawsuit, that ruling, or maybe I'll do a live stream, one of the two. But it is kind of important for us to go through that. Then she lists or has an exhibit that has all of these articles that they've already provided once before, but none again. I mean, they had to provide them here to show that everybody else was talking about 7M Films as well, not just Katie Joy Paulson. But the dates, well, we'll go through that in a second. That is the other exhibit that I really want to talk about in detail here. She then states that she looked at Miranda and James' followers and what those numbers are. She also attaches 3 exhibits, which is correspondence between her and Amber Stavig, 7M's attorney. I'm assuming this is regarding, obviously, the no hyperlink issue and her not being able to access certain files, certain posts, etc. And that correspondence is confidential. She then states that she attaches a lease agreement for an apartment rented by the Derricks and Nick Reno. And however, she did not include that. It was left out. She put in the wrong lease agreement between some other dancers. And then later on, whenever she filed her response, she included that lease agreement as well. It says it's confidential, but it's not. So let's move on to this spreadsheet that Jennifer Moore created to correct, in her words, to correct the errors that Amber Stavig had made and how the links were not to either correct posts or the post didn't exist at all. So let's look at a few of those. There are quite a few that she states there was no link provided or that it took it to the wrong post. So let's take a look at this, y'all. Also, I think it's important to state that later on, like the beginning of February, so this was filed December 9th, and then the beginning of February, she sends a letter to the court stating that a lot of this is inaccurate and that it's incorrect. And we can go over that in another video. So all of her hard work is, I guess, just undone. But you can see here's all the posts on the far left. And then she says this is the link that was provided in the middle. And then she gives her correction to the far right. So you can see how extensive this is. It's still going. Again, these are all of the statements that Katie Joy Paulson made back in 2022 that got her sued and was stated prior to the lawsuit. So let's look at some of these particular statements that were said and that Jennifer Moore is stating that she was correcting the link that was provided. And we'll see what her explanation is, and let's just go from there. And yes, this is quite blurry. I'm fully aware, and I apologize, but we will get through it. We're going to start with this first one on March 11th of 2022, where 7M says that Katie Joy claims improper management of church funds. They provide a link, and Jennifer Moore says that the link is not found, and it is because Katie Joy Paulson deleted this post. And here is a post right here, again stating that Robert Shin is misusing church funds. She says Robert Shin signed a document with the state of California Secretary of State that he would not use the income of the church to benefit himself. She states a 1994 signed Articles of Incorporation for Shekinah Church stated that Robert Shin would not improperly enrich himself or other church staff through the income of the church. Turns out this signed document is another lie by Shin. So she's stating right here, pretty much it's a fact that Robert Shin lied, but where's the proof that he is misusing church funds? I don't know if she has proof of that. It doesn't sound like she provided any of that in deposition or throughout this case. I don't know, but as you can see, this is dated March 11th of 2022. So on to the next one. Dated March 15th of 2022, 7M states that Katie says, Robert allegedly takes away privileges such as going to church, Bible study, spending time with others in the church, work opportunities, and collaborations. While he lives in a large home and drives a Bentley, he has all the dancers living in homes grouped together. The homes are through the church and they pay rent to the church. She says there is no link given, but let's look at what I found that is pretty much verbatim of what was just outlined by 7M as Katie Joy saying.
They're told by the pastor that if they don't submit to God, they're not submitting. If they don't submit to him, they're not submitting to God. So apparently what the pastor is telling them, it's like, if you can't submit to me, then you will not be able to submit to God. And so if you can't submit to me, you're not submitting to God. And so if they don't submit and they don't listen to him, they take away opportunities. So when someone misses so this was an example I was given. Someone could not go to, if someone can't go to church, like say someone can't go to church. So remember how Melanie was saying that she missed church that time? And then they got really upset with her. And then she was going to get like in trouble and not allowed to go to church anymore. That's one of the things that happens to them is once they're not allowed to go to church, they have to work their way into church too. So they go to all of these meetings. They have meetings 4 times a week. Church is 4 hours on Sundays. Not everyone's allowed to go to church on Sundays. And then if you miss, then they pull you out of church and you can't go to church anymore. But once you're pulled out of church, you're also not allowed to go on to jobs. You're not allowed to hang out with the people at church. If you do hang out with the people at church, it's only limited. You miss out on money. You miss out on opportunities. And if you apparently do and follow the rules, if you do and follow the rules, you get to stay in line. So they're making money, but they can't spend it unless they're told given permission to spend it. And then they don't know if they're actually getting paid the full amounts because they don't really know what all they're making because it changes, and apparently Daniel controls the money too. So if they follow the rules, they get jobs and they get money. If they don't follow the rules and they don't submit and obey and do everything that they say, they're pulled out of jobs. They lose access to friends. They might not be able to see people that they want to see.
So here's another one that they claim there was no link found. Now, we have already looked at this post. We looked at it in the first video, and it is a post that Katie Joy Paulson did, in fact, delete. Now, here's a summary that 7M states, and then we will look at the post. I'm not going to go over it since we already have, but you can pause and read the post as we go through. But here's the summary that 7M states, that Katie Joy said that Robert Shin and his team are controlling every move these dancers make. They control their money, time, and they are forcing them to live in property they either own or manage. The dancers are being hurt by Robert Shin. The dancers are not paid by brands, don't run their own social media, and aren't making any of their own choices. They aren't allowed to answer questions, and everything must go through Hannah Shin. They are working long hours. The Shins are paying them a percentage after they are paid. Then the dancers are required to pay them rent, tithe the church, and donate to Robert Shin. Jennifer Moore states that there was not a link found. Here is the post that was deleted, so of course there's no link that I guess 7M could provide because This post no longer exists on Katie Joy's page. So if you would like to pause and read as this goes, this is pretty much verbatim what 7M summarized it to say. And again, we did go over this in part 1, but here is the post again, just in case you want to see it. Okay, so moving on to another one. This post is dated March 18th of 2022, and here's the summary. Former members allege he's forced divorces, arranged marriages, and has had trysts with many women at church. One source alleges that one loyal woman was used as bait for real estate agents. They allege Robert would send the women on dates with agents as bait to get listings for the company. And it states, quote, please continue to spread this out that people need to stop collaborating with 7M or working with them, unquote. As long as they are working for Robert, they are being exploited. I've had multiple dancers reach out to say the male dancers are actively trying to get young females to join the group. Katie Joy's attorney then says, no link given in the facts, but you quoted the post verbatim. So here is that post. We will look at it together that Katie Joy Paulson actually did post back on March 18th of 2022. And it says, recruiting girls to use as bait for real estate. And then her post starts with, for those concerned that my reporting is going too far, I want to be clear, I'm only reporting a fraction of what I'm learning. What is going on at Shekinah Church can only be described as evil. This isn't about Miranda. I'm not sure how much more clear I need to be. According to multiple sources, Shekinah Church under Robert Shin is about submission, obedience, dying to yourself, cutting off family, and giving money aggressively to churches. Former members allege he's forced divorces, arranged marriages, and has trysts with many women at church. Not only that, his most loyal women will do whatever he needs to please him. One source alleges that one loyal woman was used as bait for real estate agents. They allege Robert would send the women on dates with agents as bait to get listings for their company. The dancers doing real estate now? The source suggested the dancers could be used by Robert as bait. Also, this isn't about Miranda. It's offensive to all the victims to make it about one person. You're the one that made it about one person for very long. It was Katie Joy. Anyways, there are dozens of people that have serious trauma after leaving Shekinah and have had money allegedly stolen. I'm exhausted seeing the comments about how it's some fight between Miranda and her family. This isn't about her. She's one victim. There are dozens of victims. They are actively seeking women as we speak. So please continue to spread this out that people need to stop collabing with 7M or working with them. Robert has one goal and one goal only, said the source. It's not the dancers. It's for him to have money, power, and control. As long as they are working for Robert, they're being exploited. I've had multiple dancers reach out to say the male dancers are actively trying to get young females to join the group. I don't want any more women hurt by the Shins. No more victims. That was March 18th, 2022. I think we'll leave that there for now. We actually went over some more of those examples in part 1 where they claimed to not have the link or whatnot, and it turned out that the video or post was actually deleted. So this is just a few more examples. Now let's go on to look at another exhibit that Jennifer Moore provided. And I said earlier that there was an exhibit that she included that was nearly 90 pages, and I forgot that there was a couple of them. There is this one that is actually 91 pages, and that includes those lawsuits and such. And then also it was supposed to have that lease agreement. It does have a lease agreement, but it is the wrong one. And then there's also this one that is 83 pages, and as you can see, she filed it twice. And this exhibit actually has a listing of all of the publications that they say also talked about 7M films. And this is their way to prove that Katie Joy Paulson was not the only one talking about 7M films. So here's that exhibit. It's Exhibit 9, starting with Exhibit 9A. And she is showing an article by the New York Post. And as we see here, it's dated March 10th of 2022. Katie Joy Paulson had already been talking about 7M films for a while at this point, and had already done some live streams and a lot of posts. And the question could be, how much of these articles are taken from information that Katie Joy Paulson provided? And yes, I'm going through these quick again. So if you do wish to read these articles, just feel free to pause and read, or you can also go to the direct website. I will have that linked in the description below again, and you can pull up all of the filings if you wish. So on to Exhibit 9B. This is an article published by MEA Worldwide. This was published on March 11th of 2022, and I wasn't familiar with them. I had to look them up. But again, Katie Joy Paulson had already been talking about Shekinah Church and Miranda Derrick. So again, Katie Joy Paulson had already put out live streams and several posts before this article came out. Katie says these publications all did their own research and came up with their own conclusions. And, that could be the case. I don't know. But again, Katie Joy Paulson spoke about it prior than these articles that they are using as exhibits in this case. Now at Exhibit 9C, here's another article. This article was published on March 18th of 2022. This is a very long article. But again, it is after Katie Joy Paulson started to talk about 7M, Robert Shin, Miranda Derrick, and James Derrick. I actually cut that one short so we can keep moving on. Here we are at Exhibit 9D. Again, another article. This was in Rolling Stone, and as you can see, this article was published on March 19th of 2022. Once again, just showing that these articles that they are using as exhibits and evidence that other publications, other outlets, etc., are talking about 7M and the dancers are all after when Katie Joy Paulson first started her slanderous spree on 7M and the dancers. So here we are on Exhibit 9E, which is an article in the Daily Mail that was, as you can see, published on the 19th of March 2022. I think you're getting my point here, so we're just going to skim through. There's no need to really look at the rest. Again, if you're interested, you can visit the website that I have linked in the description. And this does go until 9G, so there's two more articles that we're just going to skip over and move on. So as we saw, Katie Joy Paulson in her declaration and her attorney within her declaration and showed through exhibits that Katie Joy Paulson was not the first person to talk about 7M Films and the dancers and is this a quote unquote cult and, all those questions. However, this is a point that I really want to show. And again, they stated within this memorandum in the introduction that Paulson was not the first person to report that Miranda Derrick had embroiled herself in the Shekinah Church. Okay, it says the first report was made by the Wilkings on their Instagram page. But as I said before, I personally do not consider that a report. And Katie Joy Paulson is the one that is stating that she is a news outlet, which truly makes me giggle. But y'all, here's the kicker, because now this is her description, her new description on her YouTube channel. And it states that Without a Crystal Ball, LLC is a multimedia digital content and news outlet that is most well known for our coverage of Christian and Mormon fundamentalism in the United States. Katie Joy has been working as a reporter, commentator, and investigative journalist since 2017. Her reporting has been sourced by People Magazine, The Today Show, In Touch Magazine, The Sun, The Daily Mail, okay? So she's admitting that what she states is reported in other outlets and publications. She is labeling herself a news outlet, okay? So clearly the Wilkings are not an outlet. And these other publications are putting out articles after Katie Joy Paulson first started talking about 7M. And one of her biggest arguments was that she was not the first person to start talking about 7M, Miranda Derrick, and James Derrick. But there's been a few live streams that Katie Joy Paulson says something completely different. And that was after the release of the Netflix docuseries Dancing for the Devil.
I'd prefer, so they're suing me because I was the one to break the story on the cult. And I was the one that helped the story go viral. And it was my coverage that spawned all the wider media outlets to pick it up. So that's why he's suing me. It was called Dancing for the Devil, the 7M TikTok cult.
The director is Derek Doreen, and the executive producer was Jessica Acevedo. And the production company was Dirty Robber in collaboration with Wilmer Valderrama Entertainment Company. I was the one that broke the story, and so my reporting and archives were used for it. I provided I did all their archival consultant work along with 2 other people.
Question: how did you do all of the archival work, but along with 2 other people? I don't know. Y'all, I just don't know what's more important to her lawsuit or the fact that she has to brag about being the reason why this Netflix docuseries even took off. Because again, here she's saying, when I first broke this story in 2022. But her biggest argument in this summary judgment is that she was just one of the people speaking about it and that she just kind of followed suit. I mean, that's pretty much how she's arguing it. But now she's bragging about being the one to break the story. So did you forget about your lawsuit, or does it just not matter because you're too caught up in bragging about this? Oh, and let's listen here how she actually admits to talking to some of these publications and how they have interviewed her.
If this wasn't a real story, the Rolling Stone wouldn't have covered it. The Sun wouldn't be interviewing Lydia. You wouldn't have the Daily Mail covering it. You wouldn't have Business Insider is presently doing a humongous investigation. Like, they interviewed me, they're interviewing other people. I know the New Yorker, or the New York Magazine, is doing a huge piece on this as well. So there's multiple outlets that are doing this, and like literally every production company in the world has contacted me. I swear, like, they all want this out there.
So she's also admitting to providing these publications that are reaching out to her because they want this information out there. So is she admitting that she provided information to these companies because they went to her as a source? I don't know, just a thought. Oh, and she also accused publications and productions of stealing her content that she has reported.
Now with the 7M story, I'm not putting things out on my Instagram because people are stealing my work, not crediting me, and trying to make productions based on my journalism. And I just think that's really like low class.
That's what's low class, y'all. There's one last thing I want to share with you before we end this. And she's talking about publications and how they all talked about Robert Shen and they all were in on this, and that, you know, she was just kind of in the coattails, kind of what she makes it sound like. And then she goes to where she admits that, oh no, she broke the story because she needed to brag. But there's one other little thing I want to touch on. And that is this right here, where she is talking about some of these other publications and how they report on things.
There's been so many outlets, it's gone international in the coverage, all of them using the same terminology of it being an alleged cult. And yet they sent a cease and desist to like one random podcast, which is insane because like last night, Daily Mail TV had a cult expert, Rick Allen Ross, who runs the Cult Institute, which is a website where you can go and learn about different groups. And it was like, they put that out and it's like, so you have cult experts speaking out about situations saying that it looks a lot like what a cult is. You know, no one's going to say flat out, this is a cult.
Wait, what? They're not going to flat out say this is a cult?
No one's going to say flat out, this is a cult.
So there you have it, y'all. Is that why Katie Joy Paulson is being sued? She's stating that these other outlets, publications, whatnot, they're not going to flat out state that this is a cult. But Katie Joy Paulson had zero problem stating that herself. She has called them a cult, no question. So when Katie Joy Paulson stated in her declaration that she doesn't recall 7M Films suing any of these other publications, maybe that's why. Maybe because you're the only one that really crossed those lines. And also, maybe it's because the other people are actual journalists that work for actual and legitimate publications. I don't know, just a thought. And, you know, Katie Joy Paulson stated in her deposition that she has read online articles about journalistic ethics and what it takes to be a journalist. Katie Joy, I think you need to go back to reading and spend a little bit more time on it. Anyways, I'm going to end this here for today. This has been long enough. There is more to discuss, and I will be putting out another video, so keep an eye out for that. However, I think I need a couple days of a break after covering all this, but I will be back. You guys have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.